Welcome back to the Freelancers Tea Break, the short and sweet podcast to enjoy whilst you're making a cuppa. It's another guest episode, and I'm really excited this week because we've got Franklyn-Carr on with us. And if you have ever read the book Wintering or love the idea of kind of cyclical living or living kind of a bit more embracing the seasons and things like that. And also if you are kind of interested in the nervous system and how to support your nervous system more, or I don't know if treat would be the right kind of term, but basically how to be more aware of your nervous system, I think you're going to love this episode. So Ellen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm going to hand over to Ellen to do a little introduction. She is a creative practitioner, a holistic coach, and trauma-sensitive yoga teacher. So like a lot of freelancers, a little bit of a multi-potentialite there. But I'd love to know first a little bit more about you and your freelance journey.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm glad you said multi-potentialite because that's definitely something I identify with and have for a long time since I watched that TED talk that Emily Wapnick did. I don't know if you've seen it, but the one about being a multi-potentialite. And I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. It's great. And I watched that actually, I think that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And that was a big part of my self-employed journey, really. I've sort of been self-employed since I left uni, which was in 2011, and I started a theatre company. And I've had a theatre company since then, and I still have it. But I always worked other jobs alongside that. And I think because I had a lot of beliefs to work through around being able to make money as an artist, and like I didn't apply for funding with my theatre work for years. I ran successful productions and I funded them and everything, but like I didn't pay myself, and it was all kind of voluntary. So there was a lot of stuff to work through, I guess. So I think I really had that idea that work is you go and work for somebody else, you get paid by somebody else. And so that's really been my background. Like I worked in various jobs. Like I worked in a shop for a while. I worked as an English teacher, like as a foreign language for a summer. And then I got more office-based work. And so I worked Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So I guess I say that because I think it's helpful that I've had that experience, definitely, like with clients that I work with and things. Sometimes people have come from that background, but also because I've had loads of beliefs around what work is and what work can be and how you work to really overcome. So then I trained as a yoga teacher in 2017. And that was around the time where I realized that I could be more than one thing. So I'd always been like, okay, I want to be a writer and director for theatre. And I was actually also a producer as well. I just didn't call myself that. And even then people were telling me, you've got to choose one. They're really projecting this linear vision of what your life could be, which I totally think is not the way that things have to be now. And then I watched that talk and I was like, oh my God, I can actually do more things. And I was like, I don't think I want theatre to be the only thing I do. And I don't think I want to rely on that to make all of my freelance income. So I'm going to explore other things. And I'd started quite a consistent yoga practice kind of a few years before, and it had really helped me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to train to be a yoga teacher and add that to kind of what I do. So I did that. And then when I qualified, I moved. I'd been living in Brighton for a long time. And then moved to Manchester kind of a month after I qualified. So it was a nice opportunity to go, okay, I'm going to set up this business. So I set up my business that was at the time, I called it Being Change. And that has since evolved into the Good Space, which I now run. And that was teaching yoga, running workshops, and the seasonal stuff really came into it then. I got really interested in Ayurveda, the sister science of yoga. And on my yoga teacher training, there was one of the teachers on the course who was leading it. And that's a big part of what she does. And I've subsequently trained with her as a holistic coach through the lens of Ayurveda. So I started the seasonal workshops, taught yoga classes, etc. Did day retreats. It was all going really well. I was working part-time in an office at that time. And then in 2020, I was like, this is the time for me. I'm going to quit my part-time job. Well, I quit it at the end of 2019. I'm going to go full-time self-employed. And then guess what happened?
COVID.
Yeah. And because I had worked in full-time roles before that, whilst working for myself, I wasn't eligible for any government support or anything for self-employed people. So I suddenly had this like, oh my God, I've got to completely change what I'm doing because it was all face-to-face. And so I went through quite a big period of transformation and a real challenging period, obviously, in many ways. But with my business, it was like a real, I think, excavation of stuff. And I started working with a coach, Ray Dodd. I don't know if you know her, anybody knows her.
Yeah.
So worked with Ray and was in a couple of her group programs. And yeah, it was a big period of evaluating, those beliefs that had held me back in my work beforehand, who I thought I could be as a business owner, what I allowed myself to be. And ultimately, it was a real process of allowing myself to bring all of myself to my work. And so I'm now at the point where I'm fully just working for myself. I realized a few months ago that this is the first time in my whole career where all of my work, even though I'm doing quite a few different things, all of my work connects to my values. And there is not one thing that I'm like, I really hate this and I'm only doing it for the money. And that is such an amazing feeling. So, and where I'm just kind of exploring myself, like allowing myself to be all of me, to be that multi-passionate person and to be like, you know what, I can make money being myself and nobody ever told me that. And that's amazing. So now I do a bunch of different things, but it sort of connects into the coaching and the trauma sensitive yoga comes into the coaching. I work in an embodied way as a coach. I support artists, creatives and business owners, mostly because that's my kind of experience, and exploring how my creative practice is part of that as well. Yeah.
I often think we're very lucky to live in a time where we're no longer forced to fit into one box because that's easier for everybody else. Yeah, we can do lots of different things that work for us, and we can actually enjoy our work. And there is a weird guilt, isn't it, that we can also feel like, how dare I enjoy this and charge for it? But why not? Why can't we? There are some jobs obviously that people need to get done that aren't necessarily something that is super exciting or super interesting, but maybe they'll get some other kind of enjoyment out of it. But I think with all the advancements in technology and things like that, why aren't we using that to have a much more pleasurable relationship with work, especially when it's such a huge part of our lives?
Yeah, absolutely. And we believe that work has to be hard. That was one of my big beliefs. And I'm still, at the moment, I'm really working on things can be easy, because there's this real belief that if it doesn't take me very long, then it can't be very good. But actually, maybe I'm just really good at that thing and it's okay if I do it really quickly. That's a massive thing. I did a course actually that last year that I think will probably come back again in some format soon, called Work Magic. And that was all about challenging beliefs about work and how to work in a way that really works for you and embraces your unique skills. And I kind of share in that I don't really like this idea of work-life balance. I like the idea more of work-life harmony, and that they just flow together because they're all part of your life, aren't they? So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah. And I think it's not that easy to have a very clean split between work you and personal you, but it's a lot easier if you're not feeling like you're escaping your job all the time to have any time to yourself. Yeah. So one of the things that I know you're quite passionate about, and one of the things that comes up in the Freelance Business Lounge, our membership, is about kind of seasonal living and being more aware of the seasons. And I mentioned just before we jumped on this call, actually, that I know in the Business Lounge, a couple of people decided not to do quarter 1 goals because they'd read the book Wintering, which is by, I've got it right here, Catherine May, who also wrote the incredible book Enchanted or Enchantment. And they decided not to do any goals in quarter 1, maybe just some intentions or some beliefs, but not goals, because that was not their time to be doing it. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about here, I'm going to pass over to Ellen to tell us a little bit more about kind of living seasonally or reflecting the seasons and things.
Thank you. I was so excited when you told me we were going to talk about this and when we chatted before recording. And I just read Wintering this winter and I loved it. So like I said in my little sharing of my journey, I've been working with the seasons and for a while, and I guess I kind of got introduced to it through Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, like most holistic living modalities, is really about connecting to nature and like us as being part of nature, and it's very seasonal in its approach. So I've been exploring that and incorporating kind of more like seasonal awareness and cyclical awareness in my life, in my business for like 5 years. And it gets kind of deeper and deeper every year. And when I first started doing it, I had this idea of like, well, you could maybe apply like thinking about more like the, can I say agricultural year? Like as if I know loads about agriculture, but I don't. But like the cycle of growing things in nature too. And that was one of the real simple places that I started, of like just observing what was happening. And obviously it depends where you live, but if you live in the UK, which has very strong seasons and clear seasons, then you'll be looking and in winter and January when everyone's like, new goals, nothing growing. No. So it's like, it makes sense. And you know what? New Year's resolutions work for some people. And if you love them, then it's fine. But like, if you don't love them, it makes sense, because look at what the trees are doing. They're preserving their energy. They're like resting, ready for the season of growth that's going to come. And what I've started exploring in more depth in the past few years is the pagan or the Celtic wheel of the year. And I find that to be a really interesting and grounding tool to use in our lives and in our businesses. And so the pagan wheel of the year starts at Samhain, which we might know as Halloween in October. That's actually the new year. And so that's kind of a time for like, you know, letting go of things from the past and starting to think about what we might want to cultivate in this next cycle to come. And so what I like is like that gives us like this real base to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to let go of. And these are the things that are just like in my awareness that I might start to like let just be around. And during the winter, that's a time to really rest and be more connected to our intuition and like, you know, and in those festivals at that time of the year. So you've got Samhain and you've got Yule, the veil between worlds traditionally is it's thinner. And so it's like maybe a time where we might get more inspiration, a time where we might receive ideas and we might be like, okay, I'm just going to see what comes in. I'm going to make notes. I'm going to be like, these are the things. And then when we move through towards January, we might start thinking about what are the seeds I actually want to plant? Like, what might they be? And I did Imbolc, which is the festival, which is in February, which is really the start of the shift towards spring. So that's when we might be seeing the snowdrops coming up. And so it's like that real first sense of, there's a little bit of like a little bit of bravery I really noticed in the snowdrops. I was like, how brave of you to like bloom at this time when it's still snowy and cold, but you're like here, like, okay, this is like the hope of the spring to come. So then what in my Imbolc kind of practice, what came up for me was, what are the seeds that I want to nurture this year? And like that I literally might think about planting. And that's, you know, in February might be the time when we think, what seed do I want to plant in my garden? Or, you know, if you've got a little window box, whatever, you might be thinking, okay, what seeds am I going to get? So it's the same thing, really. It just feels so much more natural. And then you can be like, okay, these are the seeds I want to cultivate. And I feel like something to me about the word seed feels so much more like rounded than goals. Like I know goals, like people like the word goals, but I like the word seeds, like thinking about these things growing. And then, yeah, when by the time you get to the spring, and you get to the spring equinox, you might be more ready to focus on those, might have a bit more energy. And so you just follow the natural flow of the energy. So I just think, yeah, when you look at nature, it just makes so much sense as to why that would be. And then you just keep going. I might as well go through the rest of the cycle till we get back to zone. So then we go through. Do you know what? The name of the Spring Equinox Festival has totally gone out of my mind. It's in bulk, isn't it? No, I said in bulk already. Right. It's totally gone out of my mind. But it will come back to
That's
me.
fine.
It's such a well-known one.
We'll pop a link to it in the
we'll pop a link to it.
A green graphical in the show notes.
It's embarrassing. It's gone out of my head. Anyway, it will come back. But yeah, so then we move on. There's a festival in May, which is Beltane. And it becomes more and more about like fertility and growth and abundance. And so like we just might experience more energy. But I was reflecting on this the other day actually, because spring, we were talking about the weather before we started recording. It's so variable, right? You might get like a really warm day and you're full of energy, and then it might be really cold and rainy and like, ooh. So it's not a time like necessarily to just like really push. And I was like, I don't even feel like the trees are like really pushing the blossom out. They're not going, I've got to get this blossom out. Like, make it go. Like, it just happens. They're just allowing the natural process. So I found like, spring, okay, you've got these seeds, like say, for example, you've got a new course that you want to make in your business, and then you might start like the first iterations of it in spring. And then through the summer, then you've got the processes in place of continuing it. So you're allowing it to grow and grow and grow. Until we've got more festivals in the summer. Like then the first harvest festival is in the summer, which is Lammas, which is in August. So, when you start thinking about like, how are these things going to support me perhaps through the winter? And so then you keep going. And then so the autumn, you've got the autumn equinox. And this is more of a time perhaps of thinking about harvesting, like what we've been doing. So like, let's really take the action to make sure these things are generating the income really, if you're thinking about it from a business perspective, that I might need for the winter so that perhaps I don't have to work as hard in the winter. And that's how I like to see it, of like gathering the fruits of what you've kind of built and grown, and how those things can then support you through the winter. And then you move back to the beginning again.
I think it's an interesting one, because I think as a freelancer, it's easy to think month by month, what I'm going to earn this month, what I'm going to do this month.
Yeah.
But actually, we need to be aware of the whole year. From what are busy periods and what are quiet periods, because it's going to be different for every freelancer. But yeah, like you say, I definitely find spring and autumn are my kind of more creative times. I tend to get a lot more done. Summer, I'm a hot, sweaty mess. I'm not getting anything done in the summer. But hopefully, I love what you said about the seeds. And actually, the word goal does not. A lot of people do not resonate with the word goal. And actually, I love seeds. It's so much more organic and it's lovely. It's a really lovely one. So it's really important to be aware of how you work best. And during winter, we're all so much more low energy. We don't have the vitamin D. It's darker. It's slower days. So why are we expecting ourselves to produce the same amount or do the same amount in winter as we would in spring or autumn?
Exactly. And I think it's also just worth mentioning, something that I work with people is that, okay, that more macrocosmic seasonal awareness, which is the seasons of nature, but also internal seasons. So obviously, if you are a woman who has a menstrual cycle, then you've got those inner seasons, which are identified as the seasons, and they are the same. You can, like exactly what you just said, like, winter, which would be the time of like bleeding, you don't have the energy, but you might be getting more inspired. Like I often have a notebook open and I get loads of ideas, which you can then action. So you've got this kind of that smaller cycle that you move through every single month. But then also like seasons of your life, because what's happening in your life, like, maybe you've got some health issues, maybe some stuff's going on in your personal life or, like whatever. So what kind of season are you in? So that even in, so that you don't just go, it's spring, I must have more energy. Well, no, okay, what season are you in personally as well? Like, so they all sort of interact with each other.
Yeah. And as a mum, I'm already thinking summer holidays. Also going to plan around that as well. Not expecting that. I think also just going back to the cycle side of things, I believe if you don't even have a traditional cycle, so whether you no longer have periods or like me, I'm on medication that means I don't have to have them. I think you can still do it. Is it by the moon cycles or things like that you can go with?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you still do it by the moon. So and the moon's a really good one to work with. And there's actually loads of phases of the moon, like more than we realize, but you can start working with, the full and the new moon are really good ones to start with. And then you might sort of move between other phases in between that. But yeah, that's really a great one to follow as well. Yeah. Or just observe your own energy, and you might notice patterns. So,
yeah, I think it's so important to be tracking how you feel. And you can do that through journaling, or you can even like a Notion board or even a Google Calendar or something simple. Yeah. Just tracking your mood, your energy. Because I definitely find, even though I don't have a traditional cycle, I notice energy cycles for me.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
There are certain weeks when I will have no energy and I will not book a launch then. I won't do any big meetings or anything that week. So it's okay to do that as a freelancer, to be able to be flexible to how your brain and your body works. Makes so much more sense than trying to just copy and paste every day.
Absolutely. And I always have to remind myself of that. Like I said, my work background has for a long time been working in that more 9 to 5, Monday to Friday structure. So I do find it hard to let go of that. And also my husband, that's the structure he works in. So I do find it hard to kind of let go of that and go, I can do whatever I want. If I want to work on the weekend because I've got energy and I'm at a part in my cycle that's energetic, that's okay. And if I don't want to work, this Monday, I started the week with a massage, even though it's a really busy week. I was like, oh, this is great. That's okay. And you can go out and see people in the middle of the day, or, especially if you're a parent, it gives you that freedom to maybe not feel as guilty, oh, I should be working now, but actually I'm picking my kids up, Yeah.
Yeah, it all ties into the whole, you are your business's biggest asset, and you need to invest time in it. And in the same way that if it was like a truck or something like that, you would service it, you would take care of it, you would make sure it's topped up with fuel. Why are you treating yourself any differently?
Why are you treating yourself worse than your car?
Although my car is horrendous, but it's, and also, and this is probably a tangent, but the kind of traditional 9 to 5 is really not based on any reality nowadays, which is why we're seeing a move towards 4-day weeks. But also it was very much built based on men going to work and women being able to do all of the childcare and looking after the house and everything like that. And we're still in a way of working that's 50, 100 years old that no longer works.
And it pretty much came into popularity in the Industrial Revolution, and the clocking in, clocking out came in then as well, which was when factory owners were trying to maximize profitability by maximizing the amount they could get out of the people who worked for them. And this is definitely a tangent, but I'm just going to say it. I don't know if you've read Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey from the Nap Ministry. Do you know the Nap Ministry on Instagram?
Yes, heard of them. Yeah.
So I've been reading that book, and so she really ties in the need to rest to the Black liberation and that movement, and she really says that capitalism as we know it, and including this hustle culture and 9 to 5 actually was kind of birthed during slave labor, and the days of the slave owners trying to get the most and pretty much break the humans who were working for them and see how much they could push their bodies. And we still live in that. And obviously, there's loads to dig into with that. But I definitely recommend that book for kind of reframing how we think about how we work and this toxic productivity.
I'll put the Nap Ministry in the link in Instagram in the show notes as well, because it's very eye-opening. And actually, even you saying that has reminded me that actually it isn't just based on men doing 9 to 5. It was also people of colour, because the women were often working much, much earlier than white women were. So,
oh my God, yeah. And working whilst giving birth, apparently. I just read in this book. So definitely really interesting read. Yeah.
I suspect we're going to end up recommending a few books in this.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. You followed the whole library.
Oh yeah. There's so many. And actually, I think what really broke the mold for me in terms of how I thought about things was a book called Remote. And I've forgotten the guys that did it, but I think they owned it. They were very early on in the kind of remote working model.
Oh, right.
So it's quite an old book now, actually. But I think it kind of, one of the very few good things about COVID was that it disrupted working patterns.
Yeah, completely.
And made people realize how they should be working or could be working.
Absolutely. It was the place I used to work right before I quit in 2019. They were very much we can't work from home. You absolutely can't work from home. Well, then what happened? COVID happened, and I spoke to some of my old colleagues. I was like, "You working from home?" Yeah, they still are. Like,
Yeah, and I think the companies that are now like taking part in things like the 4-day work week and the ones that are now still offering that flexibility, I think it's incredible. The results of the 4-day work week came out, and I think it was like a ridiculously high percentage were either making the same turnover and getting the same results, or better.
Yeah.
And very, very few people had seen any kind of reduction. And I think a lot of it comes down to a certain generation still believing that they have to watch everybody and they have to constantly monitor people. And you have to, it is this kind of, there is a generational thing of how dare you feel like you can enjoy your work or build a work life that is enjoyable. We never did. So how dare you want it?
Maybe,
and people want that for the next generation. I think they would want a happier life for them.
Interesting.
So I also want to touch on nervous systems. I'm very interested in this personally, as someone with ADHD and anxiety. So I have the joys of anxiety, but also the joys of overstimulation and sometimes understimulation. So I would love to know a bit more, because I think actually there's a lot of freelancers from when I've done research in the group before who are freelance because they need the flexibility for their own mental health. And I think anxiety plays a huge part of that, but I don't think a lot of us understand part our nervous system play in it. So I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more maybe about the nervous system, or maybe some tips around it or anything like that.
Yeah. But this is a huge topic, obviously. So I guess where I come to it from is my background as a yoga teacher, and then my training as a trauma sensitive yoga teacher. And I currently actually work with a company called Trauma Therapy Manchester, and I do business support for them. But I also learn a lot from kind of observing that business and that work. And I'm enrolled in their accredited trauma informed yoga teacher course starting later this year, which I'm excited about. So sort of from that, I've learned a lot about the nervous system, and it's all about the mind body connection, right? And I guess I work with it through my Ayurvedic work as well, and maybe I'll touch on that in a minute. But yeah, so the nervous system is it's all the mind body connection. So it's all like, that thing that we might know that when we're feeling anxious, if we actually went out for a walk, for example, in the park, we might then feel less anxious. And the reason for that is because it's regulating our nervous system. So, one of the most helpful ways I found learning about the nervous system was traffic light system, which I can't remember who this was. If I find out, I can email you and let you know who the person who it was. But it was shared on my trauma sensitive yoga teacher training course. So that was through Trauma Therapy Manchester where I got this information. And so the traffic light system of the nervous system is all about the different states of arousal that we might go into. And so we've got like the red and the amber and the green. And this is working with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And people might be familiar with the terms fight, flight, freeze. And so that's all to do with these branches of the nervous system. So that is the fact that the part of the nervous system that kicks in when we might feel stressed or anxious, or we get angry and get aroused in some way. That is I'm trying to make sure I say this right. That is the sympathetic nervous system that's going to bring us into that state of arousal. And so that is a part of the nervous system. I know I'm branching away from the traffic lights now, and I am going to get back. I was saying to you before, I realised that I also have ADHD, so this is how I talk. So
we squiggle all over the place. So we make the loop in the end.
Oh, we do squiggle, yeah. So the sympathetic nervous system is connected to an older part of the brain. So the nervous system connects the body and the brain, basically. So it's connected to an older part of the brain that has less control over things like rational thoughts. So the part of the brain that deals with rational thinking, with planning, with connecting with people, with being creative. Yeah, you're pointing at it. It's like, yeah, it's the answer, the front. Yeah, it's and it's the newest part of the brain in terms of evolutionary theory. Right? When we move into the sympathetic, that's connected to an older part of the brain. So that's why when you're feeling stressed or anxious and you're like, oh, I've got to create this new product, it ain't going to happen. But it's like, you're not regulating. And this is why it becomes so important for our work. And things that you might experience, when you're in that sympathetic state of arousal are things like shortness of breath, digestive system not working properly, hyperfocus, like only being able to see what's right in front of you. You might get heart palpitations. You might feel fidgety, you might feel built up energy in your body. That would be like more of a fight. Or you might tense, which then might lead to like headaches, that sort of thing. All these physical symptoms that we might associate with stress, with anxiety, or with, eventually get burnt out, perhaps. There's also the freeze, where we just kind of collapse. Right? We're not doing anything. And you can see it in the wild. So an animal will either run, or they'll fight, or they'll play dead. And they're all states that have evolved to support us. But in our modern day, when the stresses we're facing aren't things like a lion chasing us, quite challenging. So come back to the traffic light system. Yeah. When we're in the red zone, that's, which we don't want. I'm just trying to visualize it. So I'm talking about it right. I'm going to go from the green, actually. So when we're in the green, we're in a state where like rest and digest. People might be familiar with that term. So that'll be the parasympathetic nervous system. So we're able to relax. We're able to connect with other people, have conversations. We're able to be creative. We're able to plan, perhaps. We're able to think about the long term, at least. We're able to have ideas and, feel good. And our body probably feels quite good. And in that kind of nice state. So that'd be the green zone. And then we would move into the amber zone, which might be more of that, like to get more arousal there. We get more into that sympathetic state. So we might get more energy. We might get more into that, a bit more of that kind of fight state. Once we move up into the red zone, we're really into that state of collapse and freeze. Now you could get blended states. And this is where it gets interesting. And I'm not going to do too much more than this because it's like a lot of information. And now my brain's going, maybe I should do a course about the nervous system for like self-employed people, but I don't. So a blended state would be, for example, if the green and the amber were kind of intermingled, you might get a state associated with play. Because when we're playing, say if we're playing a competitive game or something, but having fun, well, if we're playing, we're going to have a little bit of that arousal to make us want to compete and be like, have that place of competition. But we're relaxed and rested, so we're not feeling stressed. So it's really interesting, and I think it's so important. And I think got a blog actually, that maybe we could link to that's about the importance of nervous system awareness in creativity and business. Because we're not told this stuff. We're not told like, oh, it's really important to make sure your nervous system's regulated when you're doing your work. And actually, your work can really cause your nervous system to get activated, which isn't helpful. You don't get told that. You just get told like sit in front of the computer and do your work. So you try and fight through these feelings. When we are working for ourselves, when we're running a business, when we're working in a creative capacity, it's so important. Like you said, we are the essence of our business. It matters. How we feel matters. And that's all to do with our nervous system regulation. So I was working on, for example, I was putting the coaching page up for my new coaching offer, and that activated my nervous system because I felt nervous about doing it. Like, it was a scary thing to do, and I could notice these things happening in my body. And so instead of just pushing through, being like, no, I've got to get this done, I've got to get the copy out, I've got to do it, I was like, stop, come back, do some things to regulate your nervous system so that you can do this work from this regulated state, so that you're more creative, you're more capable, and might do it. So what I did in that moment was I stood up, I might have danced. I often use dancing. So the shaking is a really great tool for regulating your nervous system, for moving the energy. It's like an energy release. So animals do it in the wild, like you see them after they've maybe been caught by, like say a gazelle has been caught by a lion, but then it plays dead and the lion goes away because it's not interested in it anymore. The gazelle will shake the body and that will release and help the nervous system come back into that maybe more green state or the blended state. So we can literally shake, or we can put on a really great tune and dance. I do that a lot. I also did a yoga shape that really engages the legs, the strong muscles of the thighs, because that helps to regulate the nervous system. And I did some breathing. And it depends where you are. Like, you might be feeling that you really need to move the energy, or you might be feeling that you need to calm. So you might do some breathing exercises, or there's eye exercises, which I've been using recently, that are so incredible for changing the state, because they help bring your peripheral vision back online, and that goes offline when you're in that state of arousal. Oh my God, it's amazing. And I find, like, when I'm in a state of ADHD, like hyper arousal, doing those eye exercises are incredible. And it's literally like, you're doing it, you're putting, you look up, you look down, you look left, you look right, and then you look to the diagonals for a few times, and then you do, like, move your eyes around in a clock face. And then you put your fingers, your index fingers, out in front of you, and you take a soft gaze and you move them out to the side as far as you're still able to see them, which activates that peripheral. The sensory shift the relief that I feel in my brain and body when I do that is phenomenal. And I know about the mind and body, and every time I do it, I'm amazed. And I shared it with a client recently, and it's the same thing. So, like, that's really simple. Other things I will do is you maybe go out for a walk or go into the garden, or, so there's loads of things we can do. And it's all about finding the things that work for you and that help you. But it's, I guess, like, part of bringing this stuff in is, like, just giving yourself permission to slow down and to allow how you're feeling, and to allow that to be okay, and then to allow yourself to do something to maybe shift that. And then these different states of nervous system activation do tie into the different states in Ayurveda of different elevated doshas, which are energies. But I kind of sort of work with them together. But is that enough information and not too overwhelming?
Yeah. And what's quite interesting is, so you're saying about the traffic light system, and my son has ADHD, although he's not diagnosed yet, and he's not really under the SEND department, because he's kind of doing not necessarily facing any problems at the moment at school. But they've shared some tools with us, and one of them is that I'm pretty sure it's the same thing, the traffic light system. For kind of, they're very much about nurturing and spotting things early before they escalate into that kind of red zone.
Yeah.
And it's incredible, really, that we're teaching children these tools, and that's fantastic. But as adults, we're not taught them. And that's, be able to, when you were saying about, you noticed that you were moving into that, and then you were able to stop and even just shake it off, literally shake it off. That is so powerful. And I don't think most of us are aware when we're moving into that amber stage. And if we did, what a difference it would make to our stress levels.
Yeah. And what a difference it would make to the work that we're able to do, and as business owners, or, whatever kind of, whether people freelance with other people or they run their own business, there is an element of creativity in that. And you've got to be able to have that different way of thinking. Like, it's different when you're working with someone else and they're just like, this is what you do. So, like, what a difference it makes to how our work feels. And maybe, like, going back to what we were saying earlier, how easy it is, and then maybe how much less time stuff takes us. Like, yeah, it is amazing. This is all I just want to say as well, like, if people are interested in kind of finding out more about this, polyvagal theory is a really good place to kind of research into. So books about the vagus nerve. So Deb Dana and Stephen Porges, their work about the vagus nerve, because this is all vagus nerve work, really.
Is that so? I think seen on TikTok. So this is not in depth, but isn't that a nerve somewhere in your, like, chest or something, like, or somewhere there? You can't see because this is a podcast, but I'm kind of pointing at, I don't think I'm in the right area, but near the collarbone.
Yeah, well, you are. It's something that's called the wandering nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body, and it links the brain and the body, literally, like the torso. So it comes down, it comes through the eye, why that eye stuff work, and it comes through the neck, side of the neck, and it comes down through the chest, and it goes all the way down to the digestive system. So it's very much a part of, and all that research came out about, like, the brain and the gut, and how, like, your gut influences your, like, thought, like, there's that connection. That's part of the vagus nerve. And I've still got tons of research to do about it myself, but it's fascinating. And it's a big part, like, vagus nerve, vagal tone, it's called, is your ability to kind of move between those states of arousal. And here's the interesting thing. When we breathe in, we're technically going into that more sympathetic system arousal, more energy. So breathing in gives us energy. Breathing out brings us more down into that rest and digest, relaxation. So what we can do, so like when we have good vagal tone, we can easily move between those states. We do move between those states all the time, but just like sometimes we get stuck in them, and that's the issue. So to increase your vagal tone, you can do something that's called coherent breathing, which is breathing in for about 6 seconds, breathing out for about 6 seconds. If those times don't work for you, then you can change them. So it depends depending on your height and stuff like that. That will regulate because you're then moving between the sympathetic and parasympathetic arousal. So you're doing that constantly today. Other things that really help vagal tone are singing or chanting. And that's one of the reasons why like singing in a choir is so good for our well-being. So that's with sound because it resonates in the throat there.
Yeah, I've seen people do humming as well, which seems to do it.
Yeah,
it just occurred to me actually when you're pointing out those things, that kind of, when people do EFT, which is tapping, I don't know if, but that's actually on a lot of those points. So I wonder if that's kind of purposefully because that's where those points are.
Yeah.
Maybe tapping it once.
I've not linked those things before. That's interesting. I've just started to get interested in EFT. I can see myself training in that in the future. I'm like, oh, it's interesting. It's really great. I love doing the EFT stuff. But yeah, I've not thought about that. It's interesting.
Got a Udemy course that I've been trying to do, and I keep forgetting it's there on EFT for about 5 years. So it's on my list as well. But it is fascinating. Oh gosh, and so many things that I want to. We can't go too much longer because it can get too long as a podcast. So if you want to find out more, where can they find you and kind of resources do you have?
Yeah, so my website is thegood-space.com. And I was saying to you earlier, like I have just been through like a bit of a business transformation. So the resources on there at the moment are kind of growing. So I've got that blog, for example, and I'll do more blogs. So I'm blogging, not with any real sense of regularity, but I'm blogging. My newsletter is a really good place to be because I do send that out pretty regularly, but about once a week. And I share just things like, you know, the kind of things we've been talking about. I might share stuff about the nervous system. I might share things about my own experience and thoughts. Might share things about seasonal living. So that's a really good place. And if I make kind of free resources, then they'll go out, you know, to the newsletter. Where else? I'm on Instagram at The Good Space UK. Again, not with a huge sense of regularity. I'm on there more at the moment than I used to be, but I dip in and out. But yeah, I am there. And I've got a podcast called Create Shift, which has lots of interesting back episodes about Ayurveda and seasonal living. And it will be coming back soon with more of this kind of conversation. Yeah, so those are the places. And then in terms of things that like people can engage with, I will have some kind of free resource soon that I need to make. It's not there yet. So that's just promise. Sign up to newsletter. You'll get it. I'll probably be redeveloping my Ayurveda course soon as well. But at the moment, if people want to kind of work on this stuff further, they can do sort of one-to-one. This is all the kind of stuff I work with people one-to-one on. I thought something else. Oh, and I will be setting up a monthly yoga class, which will hopefully be starting at the end of May, and that'll be online. And that'll be trauma-sensitive yoga, so it'll be all of these kind of tools. Yeah, those are the things.
Fantastic. Oh, people are sport for choice.
Yeah.
So between us, I think we'll get together all those links and put them in the show notes. And that's. I just want to go find out loads more. So actually, I realised I'm not on your newsletter list, so I'm going to rectify that straight after this. Thank you so much for coming on, Ellen. And I hope everyone's found that really useful. And if you're feeling a little bit stressed or anxious today, I'd love to know if you take on board any of Ellen's tips about shaking it off and getting out in nature. I mean, it's chucking it down here, but you know, maybe it will. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next week.